Okay. So, emotional regulation then. Understanding emotions and top tips for being okay. It's a real whistle-stop tour here today, okay? So it's just a little bit about it, but do get in touch if you want to know anything else. And there's so much out there. So there's loads of stuff I don't know, loads of stuff people are still learning. So this is just the starting point for it all. So let's give it a go anyway. So a bit about me. My name's Amy Eleftheriades, and I'm a founder and run a small social enterprise called Alpha Inclusion and Communication. And we work with neurodiverse individuals, assisting with inclusion in education and workplaces. We're learning all the time, so each person, people we work with are so different. So a lot of what we do is listening and then communicating, but we love it. So that's what we do, but a lot of what we do also is around emotions. So what you can expect over the next hour on this sunny Sunday. Well, it's sunny in Norwich in the UK at the moment. Hope it's sunny where you are. So what are they? We're going to have a little look at that. What's the point in them? There is a point. How they affect us, and some top tips for managing or regulating them. Not getting rid of them, but regulating them. So we're going to have a little look at all of those things. And what I'll try and do is do a bit of a Q&A at the end. So let's see if we can leave 5 minutes or so at the end, if everyone's all right with that. You can ask some questions. So starting off then, what are emotions? What are they? Actually, it's a really interesting question because we all experience them, but when I was thinking this, I thought, well, how do you put this in words? Because emotions are a concept, they're conceptual, they're quite abstract and very difficult to define. And actually, the Latin for them is emotere, and I'm not even sure if I said that right, but that's what it is. And that literally means energy, emotion. And it's when I found that out, actually, suddenly everything seemed to make sense. It's the best way to describe what emotions are. They're energy, emotion. So, well, what does that mean? What are they? Okay, we've got emotions going on in us all the time, whether we realise it or not. There's all this energy moving around, and it's always there, always moving, but we're not necessarily paying attention to it all of the time. And they give us, it's basically lots of information going on. We don't constantly recognise it, so we don't, all the things, that information we're getting, all the signals we're getting, the biological signals, we're not necessarily putting words to it all the time. And even when we get them, sometimes we don't know what words to put to them. But that's what they are. They're biological signals. And feelings are that awareness. That's our mind recognising that we're experiencing some of those signals. So that's the slight difference in emotions and feelings. Now, sometimes we find that hard to define. Often we find that hard to define. Like I said, they're abstract. And I think sometimes that's the beauty of them, but sometimes that's the thing that can make them a bit difficult. So some of those signals we might feel, these are just a few of them, but you'll know what yours are. You'll have your things as well. Tense arms. One of my sisters, I'm from quite a big family. One of my sisters, she, when we were little, she'd say, "I'm starting to get tense arms," and then we'd know that she was starting to feel a little bit angry, frustrated. So that was her signal. That was one of the things happening to her. And actually, the muscles and that reaction from the muscles is a physiological thing. It's a biological thing that happens to a lot of people when there's an emotion, and that movement of the energy. So tense arms is something you may feel. Sweaty palms. Everyone, well, a lot of people, most people, I think, have experienced that kind of sense of nervousness or anxiousness or excitement. These things, they can be linked to lots of different emotions, but sweaty palms may be something that you notice when you experience a particular emotion and you need to put a label to it, to get some names for it, for feelings. Increased heart rate, and again, this can be linked to lots and lots of different feelings, but it's that physiological thing. It's that emotional energy, all that energy running around us. Increased heart rate can be one of those things, and linked to lots of different feelings. But it's that physiological response. Tightness in the throat. Now, a lot of the time we talk to a lot of people about the way that they experience feelings, and more than once I've come across people who talk about a tightness in the throat, and it's not something that everyone immediately associates with a particular feeling or emotion. But I think it's an important one, because when you experience something, you think, oh, I think I suddenly didn't have any words. I didn't know what to say. Well, actually, sometimes there's that physiological response to an emotion that can almost physically restrict our voice. So it's really important to recognise that that's a result of a physiological that physiological energy going around us. But there are lots of other things as well. So let me think. Someone once said to me, it's like a cloud in my head. So they felt like their head had kind of got clogged up with something, and that's how they experienced that emotion. Other people have said things like, my legs go to jelly, or they're a bit shaky. Other people have said things like, I feel like pins and needles or tingly. So it's all those physiological symptoms, all those physiological signals that we're getting that tell us that something's going on, that maybe there's a change. And that's what it is. It's a physiological, biological thing. And then we interpret those signals and add a word for our experience. So we've got so many different words, and no doubt as you've gone through life so far, as we went through school, with your family growing up, wherever that was, whatever country, whatever context you're in, at some point someone's used some words to describe those physiological signals that you're getting. So someone might have said, oh, you look a little bit like you might be hungry, or you look a little bit like you're crying, maybe you're sad. So people start to attribute words to those signals, and we start to get the names of feelings. So some of those feelings, and these are just a few, but you'll have a huge amount of vocabulary, some people more than others. So hunger, it's a feeling, something that it is useful to be able to identify that as a feeling. Okay, so tiredness, we're gonna feel tired at some point, and our body is giving us those physiological signals that we are tired, we need something, we need to do something in order to stop feeling those, or get that emotional energy to calm down a bit. We need some sleep. And emotions aren't always bad. So I think sometimes when people talk about emotions or feelings and regulating them, we automatically think about the ones that we don't want anymore, and we'll talk about what it is about whether you want them or don't want them or should have them. But actually, it's really important to know that, you know, there's a whole spectrum of feelings, and there are some great ones as well, the ones that we like, the ones that we seek sometimes. So obviously happiness is one. Frustration. And as we're going through these, have a little think. It's worth thinking about what kinds of events, what kind of situations are more likely to make you start to identify some of these feelings within yourself, because everyone is so different. You know, what makes me frustrated can be very different to what makes someone else frustrated, and that's part of being human. I love that about it. We're all so different, and it's only by that communication that we work out what makes someone else tick, what makes someone else feel these things as well. Anxiousness. There's all kinds of times when someone might be anxious or chilled. So these are all words, they're all labels, joy, that we start to put to that emotional, that energy we're feeling, those emotions, those physiological signals we're getting from our body. Fear. Another emotion that we're going to be feeling at different points, and it's important that we have those, and I'll explain those again in a moment. But irritation, sometimes irritation towards someone, towards something, towards ourselves, but irritation is another one. So we could go on for ages with excitement, with going on and on with all these different feelings, words. Excitement, I do like the word excitement, because often we we can have these emotions or these feelings, and we often try and put these labels to them, but we sometimes don't actually say them out loud. So I do like to make a point of, actually, I'm excited today. I'm excited to come and see you. I'm excited that something good's happening. So it's always good putting that word to those emotions, those feelings that we've got going on. These are just a few. They're just a couple, and I think if I gave you a few minutes, you could probably think of hundreds more. Whether you've got the words for them or just the experience of the feeling, of the physiological feeling itself, is different. But actually, there's a neuroscientist, someone far more knowledgeable than me, who is a guy called Dr. Alan Watkins. He's done some great, great TED talk if you want to get a chance to have a look at. And he says there are 34,000 emotions. I definitely haven't got words for all of those, I'm afraid. But I thought it's just incredible to think that for something so abstract, for a concept essentially, we've got that many going on potentially in our body at different points. So it's quite incredible and potentially scary at the same time. But yeah, so it is about neuroscience. It is about a physiological, biological thing. So emotions are there. They're things that we deal with or enjoy. But just to know that there are apparently 34,000 of them, which is good to know. So the other thing I wanted to say, and I went backwards and forwards about this word for a long time. So the question is, what is normal? That there is, for me, there is no standard answer to that. But I think it's about having an experience, and I think knowing that emotions are normal and that what you're experiencing is typical of what other people are experiencing at some point as well. I think that's important to know. I think time and again we come across people that don't want to talk about emotions because they're worried that what they're experiencing isn't normal. So I think for me and for a lot of the people that we chat with, that actually knowing that emotions are a normal thing to experience, I think is important. And you know, that word normal we can discuss all day, because I do think that the differences are normal, and that's how I see it. But I do think it's really important to know that what you're experiencing and what I'm experiencing and what the next person is experiencing are similar, not necessarily at the same time, but they're similar. So that's what I want to kind of be really clear about. Also, they're part of the human and potentially animal experience. Again, there's loads of different research going on about emotions in these different fields. All really interesting, but they are just part of what we experience being human. You know, if we were robots, we may not have these. We may decide we don't want to add emotions to that experience. But at the moment, we're human, and they are part of us. They are an experience that we have. And they can be brilliant. You know, I was saying there about excitement. Being excited to experience something new, or being excited to go somewhere, or be with someone that you really like. Loving someone, the joy that you have around certain things, you know, just feeling chilled, that can be good as well. So they can be brilliant. They don't have to be this worrying thing. However, they can be extremely annoying. On the other hand, they can pop up at times when we really wish that they didn't. You know, we think, oh no, please go away now, I need to get this done. Or, oh, I could do with not feeling that angst, or I could do with feeling a little bit less frustrated, so that it doesn't stop me doing what I need to do. So it's a huge spectrum of emotions, and I think the first thing is kind of acknowledging that, knowing that that it's something that we're experiencing, but it's not necessarily good or bad. It just is, and then we can start from that point. Okay, and that brings us to the next bit though. So what is the point of emotions? What's the point of them being there? Again, this is something you go out over and over again, but from a physiological point of view, they definitely have got a point. So they are a response to the brain processing information around us and within us. So things like being hungry or being tired, it's important that the brain gives us that information so that we can respond to it. Equally, it's important that the brain responds to the environment we've got, so that we can respond to that and what's going on around us. And that brain given that information produces that physiological reaction, and then we can interpret. So it's essentially messages, so that we can then react or act in a way that's important. And those emotions in some way help us to survive, thrive, and understand other people and our fellow humans and animals. So without the emotions, we can't necessarily live, but also we can't necessarily be successful in what we want to do and link in and relationships with others. So they are important. And back in the day, they were really important. So, you know, from an evolutionary point of view, you could argue that without the emotion of fear, some of our ancestors, or more lesser ancestors, would have survived, because actually that having something in front of us that could potentially stop us living, we need to react to that. So emotion, that fear was important. It helps us to survive on a very basic level. But also, just on this level as well, actually, I hadn't realised quite how similar those pictures were, which is interesting. That, you know, just again, some of the basics we need to kind of just go about our day, or just be the best we can be. Those emotions and responding to them and understanding them is what makes us able to succeed and carry on just in our day. Obviously, this person is looking a bit hungry or hangry, which is a mixture of hungry and angry. Also, those connections. So if we can understand our own emotions, if we can learn about emotions and understand them, we can then start to make connections with other fellow human beings, whether they're little tiny ones that we need to connect with, and teach them about the world as they get older, or even as adults, as we go. If we can understand our own emotions, it means that we can interpret and understand why someone else may be upset or may be happy, and we can then learn about them and what they need from us, or what they're expecting from us, but also what we can do together to make ourselves feel okay. So they have got a point. Emotions have got a point, but they also affect us. So I think it's important to know that emotions can affect our thoughts and behaviours. So if we're experiencing emotion, sometimes it can stop us behaving reasonably or thinking reasonably and rationally. And I'm sure most people have experienced that moment when you've gone to do something and you're thinking, why can't I speak quite as well as I usually do, or why can't I can't quite read this, I can't understand what I'm reading here. And that's because it might be there's an emotion that's I guess not necessarily getting in the way, but we're responding to that emotion and trying to analyze and process that emotion, and it stops that rational thought and behavior sometimes. And I suspect everyone has experienced someone at some point that maybe has thrown something, or lashed out, or raised their voice. And again, that may be something that they usually wouldn't have done, but because that emotion and understanding how to handle that, then that's something they were doing in that moment, if you like, responding to that emotion. So it can affect our thoughts and behavior. It can also affect how we feel about ourselves and what we think about ourselves. So if I get something wrong, if I'm doing something, I think, oh, I've got that wrong again, then I can automatically start thinking, oh, maybe I can't do this, maybe I'm not good at this. So they can have that impact on what we think and about ourselves and other people, as well as how we behave. So they link up, and they can affect all areas of our life. So it's really important, I think, to understand them. The other things they can affect are our attention, our perception, learning and motivation. So let's have a think with attention. Okay, so there's so many times when you just think, oh, you know, you need to do something, you need to pay attention to something, but there's something else going on that's just on your mind, and that heightened emotion, it just means that you suddenly realise that someone's been talking to you and you haven't heard a word, because you couldn't attend because you were trying to deal with that emotion going on. Perception, how you feel about someone else, how you see something happening. You know, what your interpretation of an event, that can be influenced by the emotion we're experiencing at the time. So that's really important as well. And learning, just, I mean, thinking if any of you are currently studying or have studied recently, thinking about all those kind of times when you sat in lessons, and maybe, for example, you were feeling bored. You know, bored's an emotion, a feeding to those emotions as well. So it might be that means that you aren't stimulated enough to learn. Your brain's almost like switched off there. So all these things, emotions are linked to lots of different things, and they explain a lot of different things. And they can also affect our relationships and our health. So long term, and obviously that's part of being on a well-being day, if we don't kind of pay attention to our emotions, recognize what feelings we're experiencing, and then learn to regulate them, they can have an impact on how we interact with others, short term and long term, and also how we are, and how we feel. And there's been a lot of research showing that different health issues are sometimes linked to, you know, extensive levels of stress. So I think it is important for all of us to talk about them, to talk about feelings, talk about what we're experiencing, and to know that it's similar to what other people are experiencing as well. Okay, so they can affect us in lots of ways, but I think also we need to start to flip it around a bit, because what we need to ask is, how can we affect the impact of them on us? So actually, let's start looking at it that way around. Let's start looking about taking a bit of control. So if emotions are heightened, or maybe we seem to experience them for a long amount of time, they can affect our mood. So we can feel in a particular way over days, weeks, and then that can affect how we react and interact with others. So, and it's for all emotions, not just the ones we see as bad. But so I know for sure we've chatted and worked with a few people who, when they're extremely excited, the people around them couldn't deal with that so well. So it's not just about whether I'm feeling frustrated or angry or disappointed or some of those emotions and feelings that people would experience as being bad, but actually it's recognizing what happens with a potentially great emotion as well, and how we respond to that. So looking at it and affecting the impact of the emotions on us, we can take some control. We can say, actually, I can see that, you know, this is great emotion, but I need to work out how to regulate it enough. And increasing our understanding of that concept of emotions is one of the first things. Like I said, they're quite abstract, so it's not quite as easy as, right, today I'm going to plug myself in and I'm going to have this emotion. That would be pretty good. Maybe in the future that could happen. But actually, sometimes it's us learning enough about them and really kind of being inquisitive and curious about them that's the starting point. And really checking in with ourselves and being self-aware about that. And then learning the language around them, because emotional language is very different to other, if you want to see it as languages. So it's not a technical language. It's not a language that you'd attribute to a place, but an emotional language is as important to learn, and in my opinion, more important to learn, because actually it affects humans across the world. So actually having language for emotions and learning those words around feelings, different feelings, and recognizing them when we're experiencing them, I think is where we start about taking back some of that control. Okay, so it isn't all about, oh, how are these emotions affecting me. It is about how can I affect the impact of them on me. So we can affect the impact, we can do something about it. I think that's the good thing, that's the important thing to understand. So regulating those emotions, learning how to manage them, can help us to carry on what we need to be doing. They're not necessarily a bad thing, but they could be something that is stopping us doing something that we want to be doing, or being successful in our career, or being successful in our relationships and our studies. So learning to regulate them, I think, is going to be one of the key things. And like I said, that comes with that comes with the understanding of them to start with. So emotional regulation then, it's that ability to maintain a well-regulated emotional state. So it's not, be really clear here, emotional regulation isn't about getting rid of your emotions. And I think if we strive to get rid of an emotion completely, that's going to potentially be more frustrating if we still find that we've got it. Okay, so it's not necessarily about getting rid of the emotion, but it's regulating it enough to be able to cope with things like everyday stress, our normal lives, all the things we have to go about and do. Can we regulate our emotions well enough to do that? Could I regulate the emotion of, you know, feeling nervous about coming to do this, to be able to drive to the office today? Could I do that? Yeah, I could this morning, it was okay. But can I adapt to changes as well? So can I regulate my emotions enough to be able to adapt to changes that I might experience? If I'd then come across the traffic jam and started being stressed and anxious about whether I was going to be late, have I got the capability, have I got the skills to regulate that emotion, those emotions enough to be able to continue to drive? Okay, and then am I able to well regulated enough to be able to be available for learning and interacting? Not doing so much interacting today, I'm just saying things in your hearing, but that's the important thing. When I turn up, am I able to be there present and be able to do my job, or am I able to just interact generally? So it isn't necessarily about getting rid of an emotion. I think that's really important. It is actually just about, can I regulate it enough so that I can do what I need to do? Okay, so let's look at some tips. Now, these aren't exhaustive, and I think, again, without knowing all of you, who I wouldn't be able to tell you specifically about what may work for you, and I think that's important. But there are some top tips. There are some things that you can have a think about that might just help kind of move on the way to that really successful emotional regulation. So one of the things is, first of all, acknowledge it. Okay, acknowledge and accept that it's an emotion. So if you see it as putting a word to it, and it sounds really simple, but actually just acknowledging that there's something there and it's putting a word to it is a huge thing. And it can be the first step to go, no, actually, okay, I've got this. I'm in control of this, actually. It's not in control of me. So I'm feeling irritated because my favourite hobby can't go ahead in real life at the moment. Okay, I've got some friends, one really good friend in particular, who really into his Warhammer. And they are really missing, they're really missing Warhammer at the moment, because that's the place that they get to interact, and they really enjoy. That person's so incredibly amazing at it as well. I can't keep up with the rules, I'm afraid, but you know, for this person, that's a really important thing. And I think all of us have experienced things over the last year that have kind of caused some sort of emotion, both good and bad. And so being able to recognise that irritation because something has been taken away and it's just something they can't go to, I think putting that word to it is important. It may be a different word. You know, I'm feeling really annoyed, I'm feeling angry. It doesn't matter, but putting that word is really important. So acknowledging it. Jealous. Now, I think this is one of the most underused emotions or feelings words that we come across, because I don't know why there are certain things it's like we're not allowed to acknowledge, but actually acknowledge it. It's okay. Okay, I'm feeling jealous and annoyed because my colleague managed to find a solution to that problem before I did. Right, it's not nice. I don't want to say I'm not a jealous person, but I am feeling jealous, and I think that's the important thing. These feelings don't define us. They are something that we're experiencing. Okay, so acknowledge it. I'm feeling jealous. I'm feeling jealous and annoyed because my colleague managed to find a solution to that problem before I did. So as you're listening and seeing this, if you're starting to have a thought, you may not be experiencing anything necessarily now, this moment that you want to write down, but just jot something down. If you've got paper and pen or a tablet, whatever you've got in front of you, have a think about a time when there was a feeling there or an emotion there that you maybe didn't put the words to, and see if you can just jot it out for yourself. These things don't have to be for anyone else necessarily. They're for yourself. So acknowledging it. But also the good stuff. I'm feeling excited because it's only 5 days until the release of the new film I want to see. Right? So I think, again, I've used that word excited, haven't I? But sometimes we don't do that enough. We don't say the words of the good emotions to acknowledge what's going to happen, and they are good. And especially again over the last year, there'll be a lot of potentially for a lot of people. There are a lot of more stressful or negative feelings going on, but actually recognizing when there's a good one, I think, is really. So even if it doesn't appear very important to anyone else, if that's a feeling that you've got, acknowledge it. Okay, so makes you think about some of those good ones as well. Okay, top tip number 2, accepting that emotion is normal. And again, we can have a chat about the word normal if you'd like, but knowing it's normal and valid is really important. And sometimes our self-talk, the words that go through our head, especially when it's in a negative emotion, they're not helpful and they're not real. They're often not real. They're just a belief that we've had that has been built up over time. But I think we need to kind of balance that. So there's a physiological reason for this experience. Accept that is the case, right? There's a physiological reason why I'm suddenly feeling like this. My heart rate is going faster. And that's okay. That's all right. That's humans all over the planet have experienced a similar thing. They will continue to experience a similar thing for years to come. And the important thing is they're going to be experiencing that. I may not see it because people are very good at hiding emotions and they don't necessarily put words to their emotions to you. So they don't necessarily tell you how they're feeling, or they may even pretend they're feeling all right. We're absolutely splendid. I don't know, potentially in this country, I know some of my friends from different countries have said, what is it when someone says to you, oh, how are you? The automatic reaction is, yeah, I'm fine. Like you're not really asking how someone is. You don't really want to know an answer to that, do you? That may be, we'll have to look into that. That may be a cultural thing, but actually often we don't necessarily know what's going on with someone else. People are very good at hiding their feelings. People are very good at saying they're okay when they're not. And I think sometimes that is at the detriment actually of us having that human experience together, because actually once we start talking and recognizing that everyone experiences those similar things, I think that's when the really good stuff can happen. Okay, so accept the emotion is normal, accept that it's absolutely fine to have that experience, and humans for centuries have been having those similar experiences, and they will continue to do. And also there's something I can do to help feel okay if it gets too much for me. It's okay, and emotion's absolutely fine, but if it starts to become too overwhelming, there is something you can do about it. So I think that's top tip number 2. So acknowledge it and then accept it, and kind of validate it, but knowing that there is something you can do. Okay. You might have heard of this. I think it's a Persian phrase that's been translated into all different languages, but this too shall pass. Often, because it's a physiological experience, that a kind of standalone emotion, I'm not talking about something that kind of carries on over a period of time, but it's temporary. All right, so one of the things that definitely has helped me over the years is if I start to experience an emotion and think, oh, I'm not, for example, before an exam, and I think, oh, this feels like it's going to take over, it feels like I'm not going to be able to function. But actually, when you look ahead and think, actually, this is going to go at some point. And I think recognizing also that when you've got a good thing going on, when you've got a good emotion you're experiencing, so just to really notice it, because we want to notice the good things before they go as well. So this too shall pass. These individual emotions that we experience are temporary. It's a physiological reaction and it's a temporary thing. Okay, so acknowledge it, accept that it's absolutely valid, and then know. This is another kind of a tricky one, if you like. I want to be really careful how I say this, because you have to absolutely acknowledge it, but also a lot of the language we have around emotions is to do with how, sometimes it's to do with how people have given us that language as we've grown up and as we've experienced different things. So what I could could say it's like, oh, actually, I'm really nervous today. I'm nervous because there's something coming up. But actually, am I really nervous, or am I just anticipating an event? So actually, maybe a bit nervous and maybe a bit excited. So be careful to not let other people's views on what you should be experiencing kind of sway your own judgment of what you are experiencing. So have a think about if you need to reframe some of the best people I know, some of the people that are most incredible at the work they do or the courses they do, the detail they have for that passion they've got, get very frustrated. But they get frustrated for a very particular reason, because they're keen to get it right. So that's not necessarily a bad thing. So when you're acknowledging that you're frustrated, you can move on from that and say, I'm frustrated because I'm really keen to get this right. And that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. But that does mean that I'm feeling a bit frustrated about it. If I wasn't frustrated, if I wasn't feeling like this, it might mean that I didn't care as much. So it's starting to look at the emotion, thinking, actually, I am feeling this, but is there actually some good to it? Is there actually a side to it that actually it's a good side of this feeling? Also, lonely. Now, the amount of times when I was early 20s, I think, I decided to go off to Brazil for a few months and do some voluntary work over there. And I went by myself. And the amount of people that said to me, oh dear, won't you be really lonely? And it hadn't even occurred to me. It hadn't occurred to me that I was going to be lonely. I was going to be meeting a lot of people over there. But I started to think, oh, will I be lonely? And the answer is no, not necessarily. I was going to be alone, but I wasn't necessarily going to feel lonely. And I think, again, make sure that you're checking in with yourself. Don't just listen to what other people might think you should be feeling. Really check in with yourself and say, am I feeling that? Or is it another way to look at it? Okay. And this is a big one, worried or wondering. Now, again, this is something I think sometimes we react to other people. We see it a lot in where there may be some transitions or changes. So, you know, going from, or even going right back from primary school to high school, or high school to college or sixth form, or college or sixth form to university, if that's where you want to head, or jobs, moving jobs. You know, sometimes the language around it, people will say to us, oh, what are you worried about? Are you worried? Have you got any worries about this new thing you're doing? And then there was someone once said to me, I think I said that to somebody, I said to them, what worries have you got about moving to this? I think it was university, someone was going to university. What worries have you got? And they looked at me, quite rightly, said, I'm not worried, Amy. I just want to know some things. And I realised actually it wasn't a worry. I was putting that emotion, I was giving that label to, and it wasn't true for that person. And what it was is they were wondering. They were wondering if, I'm just wondering if this will be like this. I'm just wondering if I'll have to walk to the university from where I'm staying. I'm just wondering if I'm going to be sharing a flat, or if I'll be living on my own. So it's really important to make sure that when we're talking about our emotions and putting some feelings, words to those, that we're really thinking about what it means for us, because how we experience something, an event or a situation, will be very different to how someone else does. So it's going to be really important to have people in your life who are asking you, well, talk about it. Talk to me about what you're feeling, rather than putting some words to it for you. So I think that's really important. You can ask, maybe I'm thinking you're feeling like this, what do you think? But actually be careful to assume it, because if we can reframe some of those feelings, it makes things a lot easier, and also not necessarily as bad as we first thought. Okay, so top tip number 4. Number 5, okay, this is about finding your things that can help. Now, I've seen the list of things. Unfortunately, I didn't get to, I know we've had yoga this morning, and I've got meditation later. It is my birthday today, so I've done some birthday things either side of it, but I'm coming to talk to you. But I would love to have been at the yoga this morning. That's definitely one of my things, and Pilates as well. So I'm sorry I missed it. I know you've got things like pizza making. You've got a lovely day today. And it's finding those things and trying out those things that are really important. So if you've got pen and paper now, or a tablet, or whatever you use to scribble and write things on, or if you've got a voice recorder, I want you to have a little think now about what are your things. I'm going to put a few up that are tried and tested by a lot of people, and then we're going to just talk a bit further about that. Because the first one, take deep breaths. Now, this sounds like a cliche, but I promise you, it does actually work. And I've used it a few times and gone, oh, well, actually, that does seem to work. So some of these are tried and tested. So I would have a little practice, do a little scientific investigation for yourself. What works for you? That's the bit, that's the important bit. Exercise. Everyone talks about exercise being really helpful. It is helpful, but it has to be your way. It has to be what you like to do. Now, whether that's doing hula hooping in your back garden, or doing press ups in your bedroom, or running up and down your stairs, or I don't know, cycling, boot camp, it doesn't matter what it is, as long as it's you, all right? As long as it's something that you like to do. But being physically active can be useful. Yoga, I talked about yoga, Pilates, and you had some lovely yoga earlier. Taking some space from a situation. The amount of times when we get those heightened emotions and they're kind of starting to affect how we're behaving, taking some space away. It's tricky in that moment to think that's what I need to do, but it's often really helpful. Reading. People often go and read something that they like. Drawing. I know lots of people are incredibly good at drawing, and the moment they get that pen and paper out, or the painting, or whatever it is that is their medium, everything starts to regulate. Watching TV, it doesn't have to be anything super intelligent or super, on trend or popular, but something that you like, something that helps you regulate. This is where you need to be writing your list. Get your list on there. Forget about other people's lists. Try things out. Writing. Everyone talks about writing things down. It can really help. Is it your thing? Maybe. Have a go. Have a go at it. Cooking. I know I think making pizza later on. Again, I'm jealous of that one. I'm not going to be there, but I hope you have fun doing it. But cooking, I know a lot of people cooking works for. Not so much for me. I find that cooking, if I'm not sure exactly what I'm doing, or if I haven't got the right ingredients, starts to get me frustrated. But if it's for you, and if it's something that's really, you need to give it a go at, and you really want to try out, then you write that on your list. Other things, playing a game, or different kinds of games, online games, board games, video games. I think if it's helping you regulate it and it's useful, and this is the important thing, these have to be useful. If they're stopping you doing what you want to be doing in your life, so if these games are taking over to the point where you're not able to function and go about your daily life, to study or to work, those kind of things, they're not so useful at that point. But if they're useful in terms of regulating you enough to get back to doing that, then that's fine. Doing some gardening. Sometimes people like to get out there and do the gardening. Sewing. Just doing something completely different, especially completely different to whatever's on your mind. So that might be useful as well. Playing an instrument. I know one young person I know extremely good at playing an instrument. I think if I could play an instrument at that level, I'd be playing it all the time. But he uses that as a way to help regulate their emotions. So taking a walk on the beach once you're allowed. You might be allowed to where you are, but that might be your thing. So make sure you've got that. Write it down somewhere. Make sure you've got a list of these things so that when you need some help with the regulating, you've got a list there to check. Stroking your cat, dog, rabbit, iguana, horse. Animals are always, time and again, been shown to be really, really helpful in helping us regulate emotions. So have a think about that. Listen to music, your music, okay? It doesn't necessarily have to be music that you've been told is relaxing. Sometimes people find the relaxing music very unrelaxing. It has to be music that helps you regulate whatever that is, and maybe at a level that it doesn't upset your neighbours too much. Chatting to a friend. It doesn't have to be about anything. If you've got a person that's close to you and you just say, I just want to chat, it doesn't necessarily have to have a purpose. It could just be chatting about whatever you're thinking about, but that can help as well. Okay, so they're kind of tried and tested things. They're kind of things that a lot of people have said are useful. But now I just want to also show you that it does, you can add to your list, all right? And these are the things that I'm going to show you now that people have, I know over the years, have used really effectively at regulating, at helping regulate their emotions. So these are real life everyday things, not necessarily things that I would use, but they're definitely things that work for them. So this is what I'm saying, it has to be something that works for you. So mapping out tube journeys without looking at a tube map. Most incredible minds this young person had, incredible, absolutely incredible. And one of the things that they found that was useful for them was being able to pull up this map in their head and be able to map through different journeys. And incredible to watch and incredible to see, but most importantly, help them regulate when they were feeling so anxious that they couldn't manage to get on with their day. Working through mathematical problems, definitely something more than one person I know does. I'm not talking counting to 10, that was far too easy. They needed something a lot higher level. Find an object for every letter of the alphabet. So just looking around them and trying to find something. If they couldn't see something that began with that next letter, they imagined something. That helped them to focus, helped them to regulate enough to come back to where they were and get on with what needed to do. Lego, I do so much with Lego. I've used Lego in all kinds of ways. It's absolutely brilliant, Lego. I'm not great at building it, I have to say. I haven't got the creative mind of some of the people I know, but I know a lot of people of all ages. Don't be fooled. There's no age restrictions on Lego. I know a lot of people of all ages that use building some quite tricky Lego models to help regulate. So if that's your thing, you put that on your list. Someone who created a comic strip with characters from their life, absolutely brilliant, brilliant artists. That was their thing. That was also their thing that helped them regulate. Really, really handy, actually, a piece of paper and a pen. I think this is particularly on transport, so on public transport, really handy to have in the pocket. Fiddling with a lanyard, just watch the amount of times you go to, if you get to a real life conference at any point and people have got lanyards, just have a little look. How many are fiddling with them? Helping regulate. Okay, so there's so many different things. Painting star constellations across your ceiling. This is something someone did. It just helped bring those motions down enough to be able to get on. So you can see that these aren't necessarily things that you'd find in a book, say how to keep okay or how to calm yourself. But I wanted to be really clear that you've got to find your thing. You've got to find the thing that works for you, and that's the really important bit. Identifying each instrument in a favourite piece of classical music. I know someone that was incredibly good at that, but it also helped them regulate. And someone else who was an absolutely amazing artist, an amazing fashion designer. It'd be really interesting to know where they are now. Actually, it was a few years ago I knew this person, and this person designed outfits on pieces of paper, and absolutely incredible outfits, and now they're helped regulate their emotions as well. So the ... is for you. Just again, spend a couple of minutes. It might feel that it's an odd thing to write down. Maybe it doesn't matter, does it? If it helps regulate, as long as you're not hurting someone else or yourself doing it, and as long as you're not kind of breaking a law or breaking something important, all of those kind of things are really important. If it's important to you and if it helps you regulate and you be okay, then you add it to your list. All right. So the last tip. I'll do a little Q&A if you've got any questions. I'm aware I haven't seen your chat, so I will have a look at that if we've got any chat questions. Keep communicating with others in the way that suits you. Okay, so people always say, oh, it's good to talk. It is good to talk. It is absolutely good to talk. If talking's your thing and you like talking, then that's fine. But it doesn't have to be talking. Okay, it doesn't have to be talking, because actually speaking those emotions and those feelings out loud is sometimes trickier than you think, and it is really helpful if you can. But if you can't, then you think about the best way that you find to communicate. So what's your favorite way of communicating? And these are just some of them. All right, and probably private messages initially if you need to, or with social media, or potentially open messages for public messages for everyone if you think it's useful. But these are all different ways. We've got a huge amount of ways we communicate now in the world. I'm pretty sure I don't utilise as many as I should. I'm learning more, but use them. Use different ways to communicate with your friends, your family, someone, you know, someone else that's prepared to listen as well. Carrier pigeon, it doesn't matter. All right, the point is that find a way to communicate that to what you're thinking. What I wanted to add here as well, so we've talked about emotions and we've talked about the kind of experience, but also how they can affect and what we can do about it. But I really wanted to say really clearly that this is your kind of day-to-day emotions. If anyone has experienced anything really extreme and they're really feeling low and have felt low for a while, or they just aren't themselves and they don't feel like they can talk to anyone or communicate with anyone close to them, I've also put, I'm just popping up here the Samaritans lines, okay, and there's more than just the phone number. So that they are big things, all right? If it's big in your life and you just want to talk to someone, then please, please, please do. These people are great that's their job, all right? That's what they're there for. So don't let those emotions become so overwhelming that you just don't feel like, yeah, there's nothing else to do, all right? It's really important, and I'm sure we can put that up somewhere at the end if you need to, all right? So I think I'm pretty much there. I wanted to have a little bit of time at the end. Thank you for listening. Just to kind of conclude it, they are physiological emotions, all right? They're energy in motion, which I think is really helpful phrase anyway. And we can put words to those biological changes that we feel in our bodies, and those are known as feelings. And they can affect, emotions can affect all kinds of areas of our lives. So it's really important that we kind of get a hand on it, understand them, and take control of them. We take that control back rather than them controlling us. And it can help us regulate just to be okay, right? Not necessarily having to be happy all the time. I think that would be an unrealistic goal, to be happy all the time. That you know, but being okay is kind of what we want. So and feel free to communicate with us, all right? Drop me an email. Like I say, social media isn't a big thing for me. We do have some, and I will talk to you and communicate on it. But I'm learning in areas as well. So, but do get in touch if you want any more information on this, or if we can help in any way. Okay, I'm going to see if I can come back to. Here we go. Here I am. Oh, thank you for saying happy birthday. I'm just seeing all the chats. I'm so sorry I missed these. Right, I'm going to try and go through these now. This is where I probably could have seen both at the same time, but I didn't have the technical understanding of this. So, so Sarah's got, just checking there. Okay, thanks Alex for putting all those bits up at the beginning. So, any tips for how to clarify to someone else when they're attributing a word to emotions that does not feel accurate? That's what we're talking about. Really important. So when feeling frustration, upset, but being attributed as aggression, right? Okay, that's really important. So this is about perception, all right? So they're perceiving it as aggression, and you're feeling it as frustration or upset. And the first thing you want to do is say, look, it's kind of acknowledge that they're seeing it as something. So you can say, look, I'm sorry, I don't want to come across as aggressive, but what I want you to know is I'm feeling frustrated. And it's that putting that word to it again, you know, accepting that I'm feeling frustrated because, and explain why. Now, the thing with trying to get someone else to understand your emotions is that they may never change their behavior. All right, so the amount of times I've been frustrated, let's give them a really cheesy example. Okay, so my husband leaves his shoes in the way of the door all the time, and I think it's a really simple thing to be able to pick them up. Now, it frustrates me, so I could say to him, I'm feeling frustrated because you haven't moved your shoes out of the way of the door and I keep tripping over them. Now, what I can't expect is that he's ever going to change his behavior on that. He may never, but by saying it and acknowledging it, I've let it go, or on the kind of way to letting that emotion around it go. All right, so it is really important to be able to explain those things, and I think sometimes it's worth doing it when you're feeling calmer, because I know when I'm heightened in my frustration, my tone of voice comes across different to how I'd like and to get that point across clearly. So I hope that's helpful. But definitely talk it through when you're calmer about why you're feeling frustrated or upset, and get them to try and listen and understand that. Yeah, wheel of emotions representation, lots of nuances and experience. There's so much out there. I wish I I probably should have asked for more time, but yeah, thanks Bethany. There's loads of different great things out there, lots of different color wheels and things to put different colors to your emotions. Darren said, I quite like the MVC model, nonviolent communication, with Martha Rosenberg, that says emotions tell us about underlying unmet human needs. You can probably see these as well. Everyone have a look. So this is what I'm talking about. There's so much out there. Please listen to each other. Go and have a look at it and see what makes sense to you. Okay, this is just the kind of very tip of the emotional iceberg, and there's a lot to it. Can be interesting, can be exciting, but also recognize it can trigger things as well. All right, so talk things through with people. What does the regulation of emotions mean? Sometimes you're doing just fine with your emotions, but others around you experience them differently. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Now, often what I'm really keen on is that it's not about changing personality, all right? Whenever we're talking to someone about regulating emotion, the first question is it affecting you or someone else to the point where you can't be okay or you can't live your life how you want to? Okay, so if others are experiencing your emotion with in a way that's upsetting to them, then it's worth sitting down and talking it through and seeing, is there something else you can do differently? But that's if your emotions aren't affecting you or anyone else around you to the point where you can't do what you want to do, then that's, you know, that's about your life as well. But I think if there are people experiencing differently, this is where the communication bit comes in. So understanding how they experience it, their perception of it, but them also understanding your perception of it. And I think it's that ongoing learning that's important. And this might be where there's that kind of conversation to make sure relationships can carry on, whether that's a relationship at work or a relationship with friends or family. I think that's important because they can affect relationships a lot, emotions. Dana, regarding this point, there's something I can do to help feel okay if this emotion starts to become too much. What are some things you could do to feel okay? Okay, I'm hoping I've gone through some of those things. Was it George? Sorry, I'll just read on to the next one. Sorry, Dana. Yeah. So I'm hoping you've seen some of those things. If you wanted to know kind of specifically about some of my things, well, it was dancing. I love dancing, but I have to have like the live music. I love the live music. And interestingly, and this sounds really, I'm gonna probably haven't really said this to anybody actually, which might sound really odd to a lot of people, but I like going somewhere where there's a lot of people, but I don't have to talk to them. So like a busy cafe, for example, but I'm by myself. And that's what I think about being alone or lonely. I'm not lonely when I'm by myself. I don't have to interact with everyone, but there's something about the buzz of being in a busy place where other people are enjoying themselves. I quite like that. So you have to find your thing. Yeah, I think that saying "all things must pass" is in lots of different places. So yeah, thank you for all your happy birthday messages. I really appreciate that. That's really lovely. Doing puzzles, lovely. Thanks, Kimberly. Yeah, loads of great things. Yeah, thank you for popping that up, Laura, again. Thanks, Tanas. Sorry if I hope I said that okay. Yeah, activities to regulate emotions. Thank you. Thanks very much, everyone. Okay, so if there are any other questions, you can pop them up. I think we're almost done there. Oh, sorry, Christina, Sarah's point, sometimes it's the other person who should be doing the reframing and realise that what they perceive as aggression is frustration, and that frustration comes from wanting to get things right. This is where the conversation happens. It's so important because perception is everything when it comes to this. You can call it, some people call it passion, some people call it aggression, some people, and even culturally we have different ways of perceiving things. So this is why it's really, really important that if you want that relationship with someone, it's really important to get those conversations going and really listen to the other person's side of it and come to an agreement about what's okay in your relationship. And I think that's the important thing. Right. Are there any other things? I think we're almost there with it. But I think I wanted to kind of finish as well because I think I've got a couple of minutes left. I'm not always really great with time, but I wanted to just kind of finish off as well to say that it's tough. It's really tough because emotions are so abstract that and we can experience all kinds of ranges of them and intensities of them throughout our lives, that we are constantly learning about ourselves and other people. So don't ever feel like I should have got it right by now. All right, don't ever feel like, oh, I must know about emotions because other people seem to. It doesn't work like that. Emotions are a lifelong learning thing, and we can always keep experiencing them differently. We can always learn to manage them differently, and there are going to be days, weeks, months, sometimes years when we're better at it than other times. So just be kind to yourself, find the things that work for you. Talk to each other, communicate with the people that are closest to you to make sure that you're not hurting each other with those things, and find ways to be okay. That's the kind of the main message. But it's been really fantastic being here. Thank you for having me.